Hi, I'm Rachel Lynn and I'm working on paying off debt. That's right, I have some debt. I've been paying off debt since 2017 and walking through it with you here on YouTube since 2018. I'm over 3 years into my journey and I'm still paying off debt. If you want to join me, please hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you know when I post new videos. This way we can inspire and motivate each other to get through this journey together. Then leave me a comment down below and let me know if you're also paying off debt and how long you've been on your journey. If you're really brave, you can even tell me how much debt you have. Don't worry, I'll let you know how much debt I have in this video. Before I tell you what my new plan is, let me tell you a little bit about my debt journey so far. I paid off almost $10,000 in credit card debt before I began documenting my journey here on YouTube. This was made fairly easy for me by moving home to live with my parents and getting my entire deposit back from the last apartment I was in, first month's rent, and a huge pet deposit for my dog, over $900. Plus, I changed teaching jobs and the pay periods overlapped, meaning I was paid double for an entire month for my last teaching job and my new teaching job. That gave me an instant $4,000 all in 1 month. Oh yeah, and I also gained some money from winning $10,000 in a church raffle. However, the take home after they immediately took taxes out was just over $6,000. But all of that together was enough to pay off all of my credit card debt and have a couple thousand left over to start my emergency fund and to begin saving for a new house. Give me a thumbs up for sudden money windfalls. I thought my debts were paid, but I was so wrong. I had forgotten that I had massive student loans. How could I forget? For years, on income-based repayment, otherwise known as IBR, I was paying nothing. Unfortunately, you have to renew this every year, and at the time it was all done through mail. It's electronic and super easy nowadays, but not so simple back then. So with a $0 payment that always went to my parents' address as I was moving around the state for different jobs each year, I rarely opened these bills and often forgot to renew the IBR. In 2017, I had finally reached the point where I was officially in student loan default. At the end of that year, after paying all the credit cards off, I finally realized what had happened with my student loans. At the time, in January 2018, I owed $100,000 in my name to my undergraduate loans. However, these loans were taken on at the request of my parents when I entered college and continued to be paid by my dad. My parents wanted to pay for my college education, and that promise still stands to this day. So from here on out, I probably won't mention my undergrad loans because while they may be in my name, this is an entirely different situation that's being handled between my dad and I. I also had graduate loans that were in default. These loans were taken on by my own volition when I got my master's in education. My parents made it clear that these loans were my responsibility before I even decided to go back to school. In January of 2018, I owed $72,000 for my graduate loans. I'd like to point out that both my undergrad and grad loans had more than doubled in size in the almost 10 years I had been on a $0 income-based repayment plan. But in 2018, in less than a year, I made it through default rehabilitation and truly learned how to budget well, save money, and spend very little. So how are things going now? Now my undergrad loans haven't changed much. My family's gone through a lot in the last few years while my mom struggled with liver and kidney disease until she passed away in August 2020. They weren't paying more than the minimum payment, which was still on an income-based repayment plan, so not much. They were saving their own money in hopes that my mom would get a liver and kidney transplant. Unfortunately, she didn't make it that far. My graduate loans have been paid down considerably. Living with my parents and having very few bills made things go quickly. I currently have about $23,000 left to pay on my grad loans. That's almost $50,000 paid off so far. After my mom passed away in August, I decided it was time to get back out on my own. I weighed my options and highly considered my dog Lucy. I also considered what would be the best financial decision for me. I decided to buy a house rather than rent. Thanks to the COVID CARES Act and 0% interest on my student loans and not having to pay anything on them, although I did continue to pay the minimum payments, along with having a summer job working at the census, I was able to save up for a down payment and still maintain a good money cushion for immediate house repairs if they were needed. I closed on my house in December 2020, taking on another $146,000 in debt on my mortgage. Wait, that's the cost of my house actually, and I had a small down payment, so it's a little less debt than that. So now, not including my undergraduate loans, because that is a whole other thing with my dad, I now have about $163,000 in debt, give or take a couple thousand. There are many great debt repayment plans out there, but I decided a long time ago that I wanted to do things my own way. There isn't one right way to get out of debt. The concept of getting out of debt isn't hard. Pay more than what the minimum payments are. Don't keep going into debt. Do this and eventually you will be out of debt. It's the actual doing these things that can be hard. Setting and living by a budget to help spend your money well, that's hard, but it gets easier over time. So yeah, I went into further debt with this house. However, I already have some equity and the housing prices are on the rise with current low interest rates and people feeling secure in their mortgage because of the mortgage protection with the CARES Act. Could there be another housing crash? Possibly, but that's another topic for another video on another day. I plan to own this house for a long time, ride out any possible crashes in the future, and I'm pretty ecstatic about my very low, under 3% interest rate on my house. As I pay off my house, my equity will build, helping me to grow my financial portfolio more quickly than before. So before I really get into my current debt repayment plan, I want to go over what my previous plan was now that you know where I've been and where I am now. So when I first decided to work on paying off my debts, I was focusing on one particular plan: pay off my debts smallest to largest. It made sense at the time with several credit cards to pay off, all with very high interest rates and varying amounts on them. However, when I came upon the sudden money influx and was able to pay off all of my credit cards at once, that plan went out the window because it didn't matter at that point. When I started paying all my student loans, things were different because I was in default. After doing some research, I found that a chunk of debt would be taken off once I went through rehabilitation with my loans. I didn't want to pay extra inadvertently on my loans by paying any of them off while they were still in default, when some of the debt would go away on its own. This plan paid off. I simply paid the minimum payment on my loans while they were in default, and I saved every penny I could until rehab was over. Once out of default, my student loans were a couple $1,000s less than when I started. With the money I saved that year, I was able to pay off one of my grad loans completely, which was about $10,000. This meant I was making one student loan payment rather than two. I also paid off some of the next grad loan. The next loan was several loans in one with only one payment. So for a long time, I continued to work on this 6-in-1 loan by paying them off smallest to largest. But even while I did this, it didn't seem to matter since they were all part of the same payment and all had the exact same interest rate. Then in June 2019, I decided to leave the school I was teaching at for a variety of reasons. I put my payoff plan on hold while I searched for another job. I was still working and earning and saving money during this time, but none of that was a secure full-time teaching job, especially one that had health benefits and health insurance. I finally got another job at my dream school just after Thanksgiving, but my official contract wouldn't start until January 2020. I waited to start up my repayment plan until I was getting paid regularly and had my health insurance in place. At the beginning of March 2020, I transferred a lot of money to the bank where I make my student loan payments from. By the time that transfer cleared, I never ended up making that payment because of the uncertainty of the new COVID world we had just started living in. I did finally make a $15,000 payment to my student loans in the summer of 2020 once I had signed my teaching contract for the next year. When I did this, I actually paid the highest student loan of the 6-in-1. I did this for morale purposes. That giant $17,000 loan was just looming at me. I ended up taking the biggest loan down to becoming the smallest loan, making the new biggest loan right around $10,000. I thought once I tackled that one last, it would be like a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, until blammo, the student loans were gone. So the plan was to continue paying off the rest of my grad loans, smallest to largest. But not too long after that, my mom took a sudden turn for the worse, and she passed away at the end of August. Between losing my mom, my brother moving home more permanently, and a few other things, I decided I needed to venture out on my own again. Honestly, this was something I was considering in the spring. I was ready for my own place again and had a good down payment amount just sitting in the bank, but I didn't want to leave my mom, and I still wanted to pay off my student loans first. So I made that big payment on my student loans instead. With my part-time job at the census, I was able to quickly save up enough for another down payment, although not nearly as big. In late September, early October, I began my house search. Now that I have a house, I have a new debt payment plan. So what is my new plan? Finally, what is it? Well, because I had a smaller down payment, I have a PMI on my mortgage. This is just over $75 a month more I'm paying just because. Well, just because I didn't have enough for a down payment, but really, it's just because. This money does me no good. It's extra money that I will never see again. The rest of my mortgage does a lot of good. It builds equity, and even the interest rate is so low, the rate of return is greater, so it doesn't feel wasteful. My student loans normally are about 6.5% interest. This interest rate is right on the cusp of it's better to pay it off than try to recoup your money in other investments that will net a higher rate of return. So yeah, my decisions here are where things get a little complicated in the financial world. Would it be simpler to just pay off my debt smallest to largest? Yeah, it would. But like I said, I'm paying off my debt my way. I'm a math person. I think about the mathematical parts, and I know that I would rather pay off debt that will net me the biggest return on my money. That is why I'm going to focus on paying off my mortgage for now, until I have it paid down and no longer have the extra $76.89 PMI payment. Right now, I feel like that $76.89 is being wasted every month. Once that is accomplished, I will work on my grad loans again, and I'll have an extra $76.89 to pay on my student loans. Of course, I will continue to pay the minimum payment on my grad loans. It's kind of a requirement. Can't go back into default. However, that payment is currently $0 and it has a 0% interest rate, which was another factor into my decision to concentrate on getting rid of the PMI first. I know that that won't last forever, and I do still continue to put a small minimum payment on to my student loans. Even though it's $0, I'm going to be paying more than that, but I am really concentrating on getting rid of that PMI. According to my calculations, I still have just under $25,000 to pay on my mortgage until the PMI is gone. So how am I going to accomplish this? Well, I'm going to continue to budget well, save my money, spend as little as possible, and make extra payments on my mortgage. Now that I have a mortgage, other bills, and pay for my own groceries again, this is going to take some time. Things won't go as quickly as they did when I was living at home and paying off debt, but there are plenty of things I can do to speed this up. First, budget and spend as little as possible on things I don't need. I will continue to document my journey here on YouTube so that you can hold me accountable. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on the rest of my journey to help me out with this. Spending less on things I don't need means I can put more money towards my mortgage. Second, make more money. I have a couple of side jobs that I work seasonally in the spring and fall, Churchill Downs and Keeneland. Unfortunately, I missed out on those jobs last year because of COVID and things being closed to the general public, but I'm hoping that this year will be different and I can get back to working there like I used to. I also plan to work over the summer as well as build up my business to earn a regular income. I have considered other avenues, but I'm still undecided about taking on a roommate or working a part-time job during the school year. I mean, I barely get enough sleep as it is between school and YouTube right now. But these would be ways to earn more money. Third, this may contradict what I just said a moment ago, but spend more money. Spending money on house updates that would increase the value of this house means less money I actually have to pay to the mortgage to lower the amount for the PMI. If the house is worth more, then the money I have paid so far goes further to the percentage needed to pay to get rid of PMI. This is where the math really comes in, and I can always do another video on this if you want, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So that's my new plan. Rather than pay debt smallest to largest and ignore my mortgage until a later baby step, I'm tackling the PMI, then getting rid of my student loan debt. And once that's gone, I will reevaluate my financial priorities. But I anticipate this step taking a while. The more money I earn, the faster it will go. You watching, subscribing, liking, and commenting on my videos helps me speed this journey up, so I really appreciate all you do to help. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you click right here, you will see my empty house tour, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.